I'm Kacy Cook. I'm with the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. I'm a land conservation biologist and I coordinate our Green Growth Toolbox. The Green Growth Toolbox is an important tool for local governments to use to incorporate priority wildlife habitat in their land use planning. And the reason this is so important is because the more vibrant and healthy our wildlife habitats are in developing areas, the less hazards we face and the more resilient we are to severe weather. We're also able to conserve our species proactively, so we do not have to employ tools such as the Federal Endangered Species Act. So our goal is to keep common species common and to protect priority wildlife habitats and connect them by working with local governments in land use planning. There are about 11 other states that have similar programs to this. And so we modeled our program on Maine's Beginning with Habitat program. Any state can model this program and use it to conserve wildlife in their state. We use the state's conservation data for GIS mapping, the state's wildlife habitat maps, and we use case studies from across the United States. So other states could take our toolbox and basically just tailor it to their state's GIS conservation habitat mapping data and the species that are in their state. Most of the planners that we have trained in our workshops actually say that having a training workshop is the key way that they understood the information we're giving them. So we present our Green Growth Toolbox in a training workshop hosted by the local government, but available to all local governments in that area. And through that workshop we introduce the toolbox, and that gives planners the tools or the information they need to then go back to the toolbox, read through the information and understand it better. And so our workshops are a very important part of the toolbox. So the toolbox can be used at all levels of planning, from the county to the town to the city, and then the support of the state is very important because local governments get their ability to manage growth through the state legislature as well. So we work with, of course, the local government at the town level or the county level, and then we'll also work with the municipal planning organization, which are the transportation planning organizations, and also the rural planning organizations for rural transportation planning. So that involves a whole region. And then the support that the state can provide for the toolbox is very important in allowing local governments to implement certain voluntary programs that they might be interested in, such as transfer of development rights. Local governments need to receive permission from the state legislature to implement a transfer of development rights program, which is a voluntary program where landowners who want to voluntarily sell their development rights and conserve their property in perpetuity sell their development rights to a developer who buys them in order to be able to develop more units in town or in a city. So the Green Growth Toolbox can be very valuable for local governments because if you design with nature in mind, if you incorporate priority wildlife habitat conservation into your land use planning, that actually is better for taxpayers. Designing in a more clustered pattern and having less spread out development, less roads, less infrastructure. Emergency services don't need to travel so far to reach their customers. Designing in a more clustered and centralized pattern saves taxpayers a lot of money. And also something to think about is that developers can profit more from conservation developments. When a developer at the scale of the development site conserves, 30 or 40 or 50% of the property or more and develops the same number of houses, they can receive usually a density bonus and develop more houses while conserving a lot of land all in one connected area. That saves them money. Up to 36% of their costs can be saved by designing that way. Research has shown that developers can save $10,000 per lot, and those types of developments can sell 3 times faster and for up to 26% more. There are challenges that we have seen in this type of work. One of the main challenges is we need more conservation professionals working one-on-one with their local governments and bringing this conservation information to them. helping them with their land use plans, helping them with their ordinance updates. There's very few conservation professionals actually bringing this to local governments in the state. So I encourage any conservation professional to use the Green Growth Toolbox. It can be used by anybody, and we're here to assist you in that. Another challenge is just educating developers. Once developers understand that they can actually make more money, also through the savings of conservation development, then it's easier for them to implement it. It's easier for local governments to encourage them to do it. So education of developers is key. Also, continuing to train planners and also planning board members is important. One of the challenges I also see concerning citizens is that instead of assuming there's an adversary role between them and conservation and developers, if you meet people where they are at, if you help people with the steps that they're willing to take and not try to ask so much of them on the first step of trying to do conservation, that's more successful, because a local government or a developer needs to take steps towards doing conservation planning in the best way. They can't just overnight say, okay, I'm going to do a complete conservation development, a complete overhaul of our ordinances. They need to take steps to see that things are working. So I would work in a cooperative role with the local government or the developer, and also as a citizen I would encourage high density developments in urban areas and suburban areas. So sometimes I get calls from folks that say, oh, the woodlot next door to me is going to be developed. What can I do to stop it? What wildlife are there to stop it? But I say, where do you live? They live in a suburb. So if that's an upland area and it's not a wetland, it's actually better if it is developed, because development then doesn't spread out so far into the county. Although we do need our beautiful natural areas in an urban and suburban setting as well. So I originally started wanting to do research in conservation biology. And then I realized that our wildlife are threatened with extinction, so much so that we could study wildlife until they go extinct. What we really need to be doing, and for me, my passion is focusing on habitat conservation, so that we can prevent species from becoming threatened and endangered in the first place. And the way we do that is to work to conserve high quality habitats, and we cannot buy all of the land that we would need to conserve our wildlife. So local governments and land use planning is a key piece to our conservation legacy. And when in doing this conservation, one of my passions also is to work with all interest groups in a way that benefits all interest groups. So we do not want to disadvantage the developer or the local government. We want to find the solution that works for everybody. And it is possible to conserve habitats through incentives for developers. So instead of mandatory regulations, you can provide incentives like a density bonus, where they're able to actually build more units if they conserve more habitat. So that's a key tool. And also, farmers, foresters, they want to see that rural land stay rural. And so there is a solution that can fit everybody in the community and conserve wildlife and benefit everybody. And I became passionate about this work of working on land use planning and the development issue, because when I did my graduate research, it was on black bears in central Georgia. They have a very isolated population of black bears there. And the wildlife management area was actually owned by a timber company. It was not owned by the state. And that timber company sold that land to 2 developers. So 52,000 acres went to 2 developers who were then trying to develop private cities. And I realized how valuable land use planning was. And incorporated into that is also identifying lands where you can work with a local government to acquire that land as well, because it's essential to have the local government support when you're trying to conserve a large piece of land in their county or near their municipality. So over the 10 years that the Green Growth Toolbox has been up and running, we have trained about 600 land use planners and local government staff from 90 cities and counties across the state. And the Green Growth Toolbox has been used in over 50 land use plans, ordinances, and other types of plans. We have very close working relationships with a number of local governments, and they can call on us to essentially be their natural resource experts. So We're getting good results from local governments. There are a lot of planning departments that care about trying to conserve wildlife habitat in a way that works for everybody. And you can find the Green Growth Toolbox at www.ncwildlife.org/greengrowth.